be talking to Dr. Ian Griffin from the Tuhara Otago Museum. He's the director there. But he's had a long time, fascinating interest in astronomy. So he's going to come and talk to us about the Aurora and this geomagnetic storm that has taken place. I have to say, I was really interested. I wonder if I had that experience. On Saturday night, I was having a daddy-daughter date. So my wife had gone away for Mother's Day, for her Mother's Day. Her mother's 92. I know, amazing. I know, drives her own car. Frightening, but there you go. And I took my youngest daughter out for tea, just to catch up on things and see how things were and stuff like that. And we went to Clyde, which is, for those of you who know, it's sort of about 10 kilometres from Alexandra, and it's actually in the lee of the Clyde Dam, but it's an old historic, quite pretty place, Clyde. And we went to a restaurant there, and we came out and looked up. Oh, it would have been about probably 8 o'clock, 8:30 on Saturday night, and saw obviously the shimmering haze across against the central Otago hills. And so obviously we both took a photo. The fascinating thing was that the photo was more dramatic than the event. So the photo, when we got she's got a Samsung, I had an iPhone. I mean, look at the photos, went, oh, look at that. But when you looked up again, it wasn't what we were watching. It was quite interesting. And I wonder if that experience was shared throughout New Zealand. In actual fact, the photos made it redder or more orange or whatever the colours were, but mostly a red sort of purpley pinkish thing, than in actual fact what you were watching. I don't know.
A lot of people were saying that on this morning's show with Sean as well. That was the
is
case
that right?
For a lot of people, yeah.
Because I was watching a sort of shimmering sort of a haze, I guess that would be the best way to describe it. Almost like a sort of, I don't know, like a sort of lit up Magellanic cloud. You know that wonderful, I love the Magellanic clouds. I love them. There's a lesser and greater on them. You know, I always, for some strange reason, it captivated me as a kid, the Magellanic clouds. But it was like that. It was more intense than that, but it wasn't as pink or as reddy. But then you looked at it and you go, so, I don't know, maybe our next guest will tell us. And that's Dr. Ian Griffin. As I say, my understanding, he's director of the Otago Museum, but he's got this passionate interest in astronomy. And so have I, but I'm completely, I have to say, ignorant by comparison. He joins us now. Dr. Griffin, Ian, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me. It sounds like you saw the amazing Aurora display on Saturday night, and it's certainly probably the best display in 20 years. So magical is all I can say.
Yeah, can you tell me why it came out more prominent in the photo than I was watching it?
Yeah, it's basically because our eyes, although we all love them, our eyes aren't very good at detecting light. Believe it or not, if you throw 200 bits of light at your eye will see one of them. It's 0.5% efficient at seeing light. Whereas your camera in your phone, and you talked about your iPhone and your Samsung, they're somewhere between 90 and 95% efficient. So that means they're nearly 200 times better than your eyes at seeing colour. And that's why whenever you see these pictures of auroras, they've got the lovely greens and the purples and, the reds. Whereas for most auroral displays, you might just see kind of a milky green colour. So it's because the cameras are so good. Having said that, though, I mean, I was lucky on Saturday. I went up to Lake Avamore, sort of South Canterbury, Otago border. And the colours were just amazing. The sky was kind of this crimson red at one point. The greens and the reds were easily visible. So I would say if you got away from the city lights, I'm guessing if you're in the middle of Clyde, there's probably quite a few, street lights and things. That will basically wash out your ability to see colour. So where I was, it was pitch black. And I could see, I was lying on my back looking up, and it was just, the sky was just extraordinary. And this display was really special. It's, probably the most powerful auroral display since 2003. And the reason we get it is because there's enormous spots on the sun at the moment that's been firing missiles at us for probably the last couple of weeks. And a lot of those missiles, they're called coronal mass ejections, but they're basically dense bits of matter. They all hit the Earth on Saturday morning and pumps energy into our atmosphere, and that's what we saw as the Aurora.
Well, we see. I was reading something in the media this morning, Ian. Will we see it again tonight? There was some suggestion that we might.
Yeah, the same sunspot that caused Saturday night's massive Aurora set some more material coming towards us, and that may impact us today or tomorrow, which means there are chances either tonight or tomorrow of seeing the Aurora. Chances are it won't be quite as bright because literally the conditions on Saturday were just perfect for it. But certainly there's a good chance the next couple of nights. And I'd say if the sky's clear, it's definitely worth going out and having a look.
And head into the country, though, you're saying?
Yeah, the best. I mean, you can, again, Saturday night's Aurora, you could see it in the middle of the lead-in. It was so bright. But most Auroras, you do want to get away from your city lights, find a spot with a good view to the south, and give your eyes a time to adapt to the darkness. And that's the best way of, making sure you try and see an Aurora if there is one.
Okay, no, that's cool. Listen, just on there, why did Transpower, it's still not clear to me, take out, they said, I don't know what they took out. Were they transmission units or something that they were taking out? But they said we don't need it, which I found rather interesting. You're taking this off the grid, but you don't need it. What were they taking out and why?
Well, that's a really interesting thing about big auroras. The aurora is generating electric current in the ground, basically, because it's things spiraling in magnetic fields to generate currents. So the current generated in the ground likes to move from one place to another, and the best way of doing that is along power lines. So what the Transpower were not frightened of, because this storm was relatively benign, but what can happen is if you get a big current going down these electric power lines, it can blow up transformers. And transformers are very, very expensive and take, months to years to replace. So if in a really big geomagnetic storm, like bigger than the one we had this weekend, has the potential to take out transformers across power grids, and that's a really bad day. In fact, in 1989, there was a massive solar storm, and it was so powerful that they lost power in the northeast United States and bits of Canada. So this is a real risk. And there are researchers working with Transpower to understand that risk and make sure that if we do get a big solar storm big enough to do real damage, they can protect the grid and make sure that it's functional afterwards. So that's what they were doing over the weekend. It turned out to be unnecessary as far as I understand. But it's really good that Transpower did that, because let's imagine that an even more powerful storm came along. We all want our electricity system to be intact afterwards. So New Zealand's ahead of the world in this planning stuff. So, I know I hear your question saying why are they doing it, but in a sense, the fact that they did it for a minor storm, they know how to do it for a bigger storm. That's really good, I think. Well,
at least I still had hot water on Sunday morning, so that was my major concern. But I'm also interested in the colour. So, okay, I've got the coronal mass ejection, solar flares come out from the sun. It's sending this massive material. It strikes, I think, is it the magnetosphere?
Yeah,
is it right?
So these particles come from the sun, mostly protons and electrons. So they've got an electric charge. When they find our magnetic field, they spiral around it, and then those particles bump into gases in our atmosphere, knock off electrons, and that's what's glowing. So when you look at the colours, the different colours are caused by different gases glowing. So the greens tend to be oxygen, and most of the reds tend to be oxygen. And you can also get purples, which is made by nitrogen. And all of these gases happen at different... So the colours of the aurora all come at different altitudes as well. So the display we saw on Saturday night, the lowest glowing gas was about 50 kilometres above the ground. So that's about 5 times as high as the average airliner flies. And they go up to 600, 700 kilometres. So, they can go higher than the space station, in fact. So... Auroras are just a brilliant way to show some physics and some real science, and it's a real lesson if you get into it. It can be fascinating.
Oh, well, listen, I look forward to primary school teachers explaining it this morning. Listen, I'm being facetious, but just apropos of a previous conversation we had for the Education Review Office saying that primary school teachers don't know how to teach science.
That's quite interesting, by the way. My daughter's a primary school teacher, and she was trained in the UK where they recognised the challenge. And she studied primary teaching with science as a result. And I'm pleased to say she's teaching in Auckland, so I'm pretty sure her school will get some.
Yeah, they'll be up to standard. No, just to express, Ian, the Education Review Office have come out this morning saying that 60% of teachers don't know how to teach their subject properly, and particularly primary school teachers in science is a problem that the Aero have identified as well. You're actually making a bit of a difference, mate, because you're director of science. You are obviously a very articulate explainer of science to ordinary people like me. What a great shame they don't get you in to teach those primary school teachers how to teach science, eh?
Oh, well, yeah, I guess I'm more hopeful about things like this. But I will say, I mean, I think if you ask most people, not just primary school teachers, to explain why we have phases of the moon, I challenge you, most people will probably not understand why we have phases of the moon. And that's not necessarily a reflection of teaching. It's just, I think people don't often think about stuff like that, and we need to be better at explaining it.